Welcome to Educational Technique channel. Daffodil is the first poem of plus 2 second students. Now we are going to discuss third and fourth stanza only. And the first and second stanza will be seen at last moment of this video, which has been discussed before this video. I am Rajiv, the teacher of English. This is the first poem of the second year plus 2 students, Daffodils. We have discussed before the first and second stanza. Now we are going to discuss about third and first stanza in this video. And the first and second stanza's video will be available on this channel, and it is available also in description box. So now we are going to discuss about the third and first stanza. Before going through the third and first stanza, we have to read aloud the stanzas. And that is the waves beside them danced and birthday outdid the sparkling waves singly. A poet could not be but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the soul to me had brought. For often when on my castle lie, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fill and dances with the daffodils. So before going through the third and first stanza, we have to discuss the difficult words related to that two stanzas. Outdid means more than or surpass. Sparkling means bright. Glee means joy. Jocund company, happy company. Gaze, look fixedly, often, repeatedly. Catch, bad, pensive, thoughtful mind. Flash upon, appear suddenly. Bliss, great joy. Solitude, loneliness. Now we are going to understand that stanza. The waves beside them danced, and but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. They or them refers to whom? Them refers to the daffodils. The daffodils are dancing beside the lake beneath the trees. And the waves which are created within the lakes beside the daffodils are dancing. The waves of the lake are blowing in wind. The waves of the lake also are dancing, and the daffodils also are dancing. The waves were dancing near them, but the dance of the daffodils was far better than the dance of the waves. The poet was overwhelmed. The happy company of daffodils made him joyous. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. The poet is the only person who can think in such a way to see that type of a beautiful nature. Poet is the God which created all non-living things to living things. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company means the poet feels that the daffodils are his jocund company or happy company. When we are with our happy friends, at that time we feel so much happy. In such a way, when the poet is with the daffodils, when the poet is the nearby the daffodils, he feels so much happy. That's why the poet compared the daffodils with the jocund company. I gazed and gazed, I looked fixedly, but little thought that wealth the soul to me had brought. The poet gazed for some while to the sight of the nature or the daffodils, and he had a little thought after some time that what he had gained after seeing that nature for the some time. By spending some time here, what will he get? No gold, no diamond could be compared with the pleasure by seeing the nature. No gold, no diamond could be equal with it. He gazed and gazed at the flowers and thought that the flowers brought to him all the wealth of the world. Here the poet was overwhelmed, overjoyed. The what is the main stanza, main gist of the third stanza? Now we are going to discuss the waves of the daffodils while they are dancing is better than the dance of the waves which is created by the lake water. The poet was overwhelmed, overjoyed by seeing the nature. The happy company of the daffodils made him joyous. He gazed and gazed at the flowers and thought that the flowers brought to him all type of wealth of the world. No gold and no diamond could be equal with it. Question is, which is better than the waves of the lake? Our answer is the waves of the daffodils was far better than the dance of the waves. Whom did the poet compare with? The jocund company. The poet compared jocund company with the daffodils. Why? Because when we are with our happy friends, we feel so much comfortable and so much happy. In this way, the poet feels so much happy when he was with the daffodils. The poet gazed and gazed whom? The poet gazed and gazed the flowers of the daffodils. What did he thought? What did he think? Now he thought that the wealth of the world is here. He thought that the flowers brought to him all the wealth of the world. No gold, no diamond could be equal with it. Next, we are going to discuss about the first stanza. For often when on my couch means bed. In vacant or in pensive, pensive means thoughtful. Flash often means appear suddenly. That inward eye, which is bliss means loneliness, in solitude. Then my heart with pleasure fills the dances with the daffodils. Means often in the still night when the poet comes to bed, very often or sometimes when the poet threw himself to the bed and when the poet was going to bed or when the poet was on the couch or bed at that time in his vacant or in his thoughtful mind he thought that or he thought about the sight of the beautiful nature of the daffodils because the poet was so much fascinated by the daffodils in his mind by his mind is filled with the sorrowful thoughts worldly affairs and he feels unhappy at that moment through his inward eye through the mental eye comes the sweet memory of the daffodils. But when the poet threw himself into bed, at that time he thought so many types of sorrowful thinkings. And his mind is filled with sorrowful thoughts, worldly affairs. So he feels so much unhappy at that time, or at that moment, in his inward eye, in his mental eye, the comes of the sweet memory, the sweet memory daffodils, or means when the poet was going to bed at that time, his mind is filled with sorrowful thoughts, and when the sweet memory of the daffodils is come through his mind at that time he feels so much happy. That's everything. The flowers dance in his heart and mind, then he forgets his own happiness. At that time the flowers are dancing in his heart, in his mind. At that time the poet forgets all his own happiness. the flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of a solitude. When the poet went to his bed at that time, the memory of the daffodils come across in his inward eye, or in his mind, or in his heart. At that time, this is the bliss of blessing of solitude. At that time, he feels with a jocund company, or he feels not as a single person, and he feels that he is with the daffodils at that time, or at that time the daffodils were dancing in his mind, and he forgets all his unhappiness. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. At that time, the poet's heart is filled with the sweet memory of the daffodils, and the heart is filled with the pleasure, and in his heart the daffodils are dancing. At that time, the very sight of the daffodils makes him spirited, and he feels elated. So this is the first stanza. Or what is the gist of the first stanza? Very often when the poet was going to bed in vacant or in thoughtful mind or in sorrowful mind, the suddenly the sweet memory of the daffodils come across the inward eye of the poet, and which is the blessing of the solitude, and which forgets his loneliness, and which helps him to forget his sorrowfulness. And at that time his heart is filled with the pleasure, and in his heart the daffodils are dancing. This is the first stanzas, and now we are going to ask some questions relating that question. Mention the two moods of the poet. One is vacant mood and one is the pensive mood. What does the poet feel when he remembers the sight of the daffodils? Now, when the poet remembers the sight of daffodils, his heart with pleasure fills. When does the poet write the poem? Beside or of the lake? Do you think? And the poet writes the poem of the lake, because when on his couch he thought about the daffodils. How does the poet feel looking at the daffodils? After looking at the daffodils, the poet feels that the flowers brought him all type of wealth and world. They are precious. What happens to the poet when he lies on his couch? Now, when the poet lies in his couch, his mind is filled with unhappy thoughts, and the daffodils flash upon his mind through the inward eye.